Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about frontal bone. And here at the side you can see the diagrammatic representation of skull where green highlighted area is frontal bone. So let's start the topic with introduction. Frontal bone is a vital component of human skull. It is located at the interior portion of the cranium. It forms the forehead, contributes to the upper parts of eye sockets and play a protective role for the frontal lobes of brain. This single bone exhibits both structural strength and intricate design, contributing significantly to facial aesthetics and cranial stability. Now let's talk about position and structure of frontal bone. Frontal bone spans the upper front of the skull and is divided into two primary parts. These are squamous part, that is the vertical part, and this part is large flat area that forms the forehead. It provides muscle attachment sites and houses the frontal sinuses. The other part of frontal bone is orbital part or horizontal part, that are the plate-like surfaces that form the roof of the orbit and contribute to the floor of the anterior cranial fossa. The next, it has a nasal portion, that is a smaller region between the eyebrows that contribute to the formation of root of nose. And these distinguishing feature of frontal bone like glabella, that is the smooth area above the nasal bridge, and the superciliary arches, which are the ridge above each orbit, more prominent in some individuals, especially males, is really important to understand for clinical understanding of frontal bone. Now let's talk about key features of frontal bone. The first key feature is frontal sinuses. They are located within the squamous portion and they are air-filled cavity that vary in size between individuals. They lighten the weight of skull and attribute to the resonance of the voice. Second key feature is supraorbital margin or foramen or notch. Each orbit is bounded superiorly by a large ridge containing a small opening, that is foramen or notch, through which supraorbital nerve and vessel pass to supply the forehead, and that is the supraorbital margin and foramen that is present over there. Next we will talk about third feature, that is glabella, that is formed between the superciliary arches, and this area serves as a landmark in both clinical and forensic anatomy. Fourth feature is frontal eminence, that is rounded elevation on either side of forehead that indicate the original center of ossification during development. Now let's talk about articulations of frontal bone. Frontal bone articulate with several surrounding cranial and facial bone, forming joints known as sutures. These articulations include parietal bone through conal suture, nasal bone, maxilla, lacrimal bone, zygomatic bone, ethmoid bone, sphenoid bone. So these are the 7 articulations of the frontal bone. So frontal bone articulate with all these bones like parietal bone, nasal bone, maxilla, lacrimal bone, zygomatic bone, ethmoid bone, and sphenoid bone. As you can see here at the side, the diagram. And these connections help maintain the integrity of skull while accommodating growth and providing flexibility during development. Now let's talk about development and ossification of frontal bone. Frontal bone originates from intramembranous ossification beginning in two halves during fetal development. The two halves are divided by metopic suture, that is also called as frontal suture, which typically fuses by 6 to 8 years of age. In some individuals, the suture persists into adulthood, a condition known as persistent metopic suture, that is a normal anatomical variant with no functional consequences. Now let's talk about functional role of frontal bone. First is protection of brain, as it forms part of anterior cranial wall shielding the frontal lobe. Second functional role is support and shape, as it gives structure to the forehead and upper face, housing parts of orbits and nasal cavity. Third functional role is sensory and muscular attachment, as the frontal bone provides points of attachment for facial expression muscles, particularly frontalis muscles. Now let's talk about clinical significance of frontal bone. The first clinical significance is fractures that often result because of trauma, particularly to the forehead, and may involve front orbits or frontal sinuses and require surgical management. Second clinical significance is frontal sinusitis, that is inflammation or infection of frontal sinus, and it can cause facial pain, pressure, and headaches, sometimes leading to complication if untreated. Further talking about its clinical significance, it has significance in surgical applications, as surgeons may access the brain frontal lobe through frontal craniotomies that often navigating around or through the frontal bone. The fourth clinical significance is its forensic importance, as the shape, prominence of features like glabella and presence or absence of metopic suture are helpful in determining age and sex in skeletal remains. Now let's talk about conclusion of this lecture video. Frontal bone is a multifunctional structure that contributes to the cranial protection, facial shape, and key physiological functions such as sinus drainage and neurological safeguarding. Its complex form and connection with neighboring bone highlight its anatomical and clinical significance, making it an essential focus in both basic and applied medical sciences. And this was all about frontal bone. Hopefully you liked the video. If you do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you for watching.